So welcome everyone to this whole community inclusion webinar on celebrating the high holidays with children of all abilities. I'm Gabrielle Kaplan-Mayer. I direct whole community inclusion. Welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, we're just getting started. I'm going to ask everyone to just mute yourself for the time being until we get to the Q&A section of our webinar. Today we have a lot to share and we're so delighted you can join us. We're going to examine barriers that might be out there in our schools, in our communities, that stop people from having full participation in the high holidays. We'll suggest some creative approaches to solutions for participation. We're going to focus on themes and feelings that we want our children, our teens, everyone to experience at the high holidays. We'll consider some multi-sensory ways to engage with the high holidays at home, using cooking, music, technology, and more. Welcome, everyone. And keep in mind when I say at home, for those of you who are educators, these are also great activities that you can use in the classroom. And again, as I mentioned, there will be time for you to ask questions at the end. And through the webinar, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat box. Joseph Robbins, who you're going to meet in just a moment, also put a link in the chat box. We have live captioning available. So just check your chat box if you're interested in the captioning. Joe, I'm going to invite you to share all about the Union for Reform Judaism, Ruderman Family Foundation, Disabilities Inclusion Learning Center, who's partnering with us today, and we're so grateful that you're here.
Thank you, Gabby. It's great to see everybody. So I'm Joseph Robbins, as Gabby mentioned, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Union for Reform Judaism's Presidential Disabilities Inclusion Initiative, which is in partnership with the Ruderman Family Foundation. We consult with all the Reform congregations around North America, and one of the major tools that we've developed, not just for Reform congregations, but for all congregations and organizations, schools, really people worldwide, is the Disabilities Inclusion Learning Center. So it was developed through the partnership. It features over 50 webinars by disabilities experts and self-advocates, including Gabby, who has done work for us. And specific to today's webinar and content, we have a high holidays section where you can go and find webinars related to inclusion and the holidays. And this recording, in addition to being shared by Gabby, will be up on the site as well for people to come and view it there. We have a lot of additional resources, and just in terms of the overall initiative, it's great to be able to work with JLV and Whole Community Inclusion and co-sponsor this fantastic webinar from Gabby.
So thank you so much for being here, and I really encourage everyone after the webinar, if you haven't, or whenever you have time, I know it's a busy time, go to disabilitiesinclusion.org. There are so many amazing resources there, all online, all accessible to you whenever you need them, and it's really an incredible resource, and to let your families know as well, Joe.
Definitely.
And as Joe mentioned, I'm the Director of Whole Community Inclusion here at Jewish Learning Venture. And we're based in the greater Philadelphia area, working on making the Jewish community accessible for all families. And we do a lot of training and support with our congregations, as well as a lot of seminars and webinars directed to families. And we're also doing training outside of the greater Philadelphia area. I had a really great time doing some training in New York last year. I was in Louisville, Kentucky. So my contact information is at the end, and I would love to come join you in your community. So today we're going to be thinking about the high holy days. And so even though we're on a webinar, we're not sitting in a room together, I want us to begin with a shared moment and think back for yourself, for your personal experience during the high holy days. What made you feel connected to community over the years? It might be a certain Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur that jumps out to you, maybe not last year, maybe a time in your childhood. Was it a song, a prayer, words? Is it memories? As I bring this forward to us now, thinking about your own experiences or just a feeling when you think about Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, what was it that made you feel connected? And if something's coming up for you, if you're having something accessible to you, go ahead and type it in the chat box. It would be really cool to see. You can send it out to everyone so we can all see it. I'll just share from myself. There are different things, I think, every year that make me feel connected. In recent years, I think going to Tashlik and being out in nature, and it's something that my family can all do together. I think that's the thing, the moment maybe that makes me feel the most connected. So if something's coming up for you and you're open to it, go ahead and type it now.
Where do I type it?
You should have a little chat box. There's a drop down menu. If you can't find it, don't worry. If you want to share it and you can't find the chat box, if anyone wants to share, go ahead. Rena said the sound of the shofar and also tashlik. Rena, I'm glad you said that. That sound of the shofar, right? It's so visceral. It's when else in our experience do we hear that sound? Exactly. I think that takes me right back to. Joe said standing near the Aron for Nila at the end of Yom Kippur. Yeah, again, those sort of only in those moments that we have those experiences and how evocative they can be. And so our webinar today, and please feel free to keep typing if something comes to you, but we want to make sure that people of all abilities have access to these moments of connection. These are profound Jewish moments that connect us to our community, and we want to make sure everyone can access them. So we know that children who may have cognitive or learning disabilities or sensory processing issues might have some barriers to participation on the high holidays. And you see this child on the graphic on the right who's really experiencing some distress. So I want to start with the idea of same and different, right? And that for kids who get acclimated and used to how things are at their synagogue, there's a lot that's quite different, even though it might be the same synagogue at the building. You know, if normally for Shabbat services, you walk in, you take your seat, the service begins. At many of our congregations, there are lines in the lobby. The lobby itself might look different. You know, there are tables set up where people are checking in. And so even entering the building, we might not think of that, but we want to give our kids a heads up that it could feel quite different. The music and the tunes, even again, for kids who are used to the familiarity and the structure of a Shabbat service, we've changed the nusach, we've changed the melodies. The length of the day is certainly something that families need to consider, right? Because it's quite different than going for a Saturday morning to expect your child to be able to attend for a whole day, whether it's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. I love the tradition of wearing new clothes for Rosh Hashanah especially, but we want to consider, especially kids who have sensory issues, new is not always so comfortable. Those new shoes, the tags on the clothes, the stiffness of them, that tradition might not be something that works for everyone. We might want to have our kids wearing things that already feel comfortable. And that the high holidays have with them what can be sensory overwhelm just from the amount of people. Again, it could be the same sanctuary, but now it's packed. Extra chairs are in. Different seats, you know, the same old place you like to sit. Maybe there's assigned seats, and that's a difference. Even the sound of the shofar, I'm going to cover my ears. I've seen many times for kids over the years who didn't have a warning of how loud, even if they were at synagogue last year, they might not remember just how loud a powerful shofar blast can be. So there are really a number of things that could be barriers to having a fully accessible experience. But as educators, as parents, as community leaders, we're creative. I think that preparing our kids, and this helps for teens, this helps for adults, for all of us, when you know what to expect, it takes the anxiety down. I have a link there, and I'll share this out with everyone after. On the Gateways website, jgateways.org, there's some wonderful social stories that you can download and print to help your child know what to expect at the high holidays. Pack those noise-canceling headphones for a child who has auditory sensitivity. And speaking of packing, making sure that you've got everything that child might need, whatever the expectation is, that you're going to stay for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, your snacks, favorite toys, books, fidgets, what will help make your child feel comfortable in the sanctuary. That registration table, make a plan. If you know at your congregation there's a long line you have to get through, maybe there's someone else who can be with your child so they don't have to get through that. And making a plan for the day. You know, it's certainly okay for parents. I'm a mom myself of a 14-year-old son who has some pretty significant needs. He's on the autism spectrum and has an intellectual disability. And for him, it's just not realistic to spend the entire day at the synagogue with us. So having a sitter available as part of our family's plan is really important. Oh, Rena just mentioned that the audio is sounding really broken up for her. I'm going to speak a little closer, Rena, and see if that helps at all. Similarly, if you're on the synagogue side of things, looking at how your childcare is set up, are there questions on the registration about kids who might need extra support? Are the childcare workers responsible, or are parents responsible for bringing a TSS or a sitter? Trying to clarify this ahead of time. One thing that congregations can do that can help a lot, and I'm hearing more people do this all the time, is set up a quiet room, a place where families can be there at synagogue, but that when a child or a teen or a grown-up needs a break, that it's a place where there can be some books, some sensory toys, some puzzles, and that if families and ushers know where it is. That's another thing. I was working with a synagogue last year, and they shared with me they had set up a quiet room really well, but the committee who did that forgot to let the ushers know. So then there was confusion about which is the quiet room, where should you go? So, you know, again, if it's not something that your synagogue could do for Rosh Hashanah, maybe you can get it together for Yom Kippur and let families know about that. And of course, back to the clothes, always try them on ahead of time. There's so many important themes and feelings that we want our children to take away from the high holidays. And sometimes, you know, as we reflect on the themes of the holidays, they can be quite abstract, but they're also themes that we can make very concrete. When we wish everyone a sweet new year, what does that really mean, right? A sweet new year. Maybe happy is a word that kids identify more than sweet. What makes you feel happy? Who do you love? Who loves you? It's a new year. Wait, again, how does that relate to a child's life? Well, we can ask, what is new that's happening in your life? Are you at a new school? Do you have a new teacher? New activities? And I think that the themes that we're reflecting on as adults right now, letting go, saying I'm sorry, these are abstract lessons that we all as adults try and grapple with all of our lives. And we can teach them to kids of all different abilities, that we all make mistakes, we get new chances, we get to start over. I love this quote from Hans Christian Andersen: "Where words fail, music speaks." And I found this to be so significant in my son's life. He is a music lover, and many of the kids that I get to teach and work with. That again, they're the traditional Rosh Hashanah songs, all of our contemporary Jewish musicians. There are a lot of fun Rosh Hashanah songs. I love the Shofar Blast song, if you know that one, by Peter and Ellen Allard. We put together a playlist for you on our jkidphilly.org website with all kinds of Rosh Hashanah songs. But again, play it today, play it tonight, play it before you get to synagogue to help your child be ready. Another thing that I do, I lead services for Rosh Hashanah at my synagogue, Mishkan Shalom. I like to take songs that kids are already familiar with. Here are a few ideas for you, and just give a Rosh Hashanah theme. You know, if you're ready for the new year, clap your hands. I'm not going to go on and sing for you. You've got them here. This is a fun one, number 3, to the tune of Bingo. We all know Bingo. This time of year with apples near, we dip them into honey. Honey, and you go on like bingo. So any of you master educators who know 100 kids songs, think about how you could take familiar songs and give them a high holiday theme. Cooking is another activity that kids of all different abilities can really enjoy. This is actually a picture of my son and I. He's 14 and a half now. I think he was probably 7 or 8 there. This is a kid's cookbook that I wrote a number of years ago. It's still available online, and you can check that out. But the experience of food also in our Jewish tradition is so important to take us back to the feeling of the holiday. And apples and honey is such a great sensory experience. There's my son with a tool. He has a lot of fine motor challenges, but he was able to use that tool and help me to cut the apples, mixing a honey cake, mixing an apple cake, challah, doing the round challah together. So I really encourage families to look at how you can bring your kids and teens into the cooking experience. Technology is here for us. There are so many incredible iPad apps. This is one favorite one I love, Wake Up World, which is an interactive Rosh Hashanah book. iShofar is so cool, so that the kids, again, can get used to the shofar blast before they actually experience it. And so many of our kids have iPads and are using iPads for communication and learning. So you can load them up with really cool apps related to the high holidays. Godcast, if you haven't seen it, has some great resources for Rosh Hashanah. Many kids love to watch YouTube videos, and there's so many great Rosh Hashanah songs out there from the Fountainheads and the Maccabees. Start playing them, get them ready by using the technology that they're already comfortable and familiar with. Find out what they like. There are also multi-sensory experiences connected to the holiday that your family can do, again, before or after the holiday. If your child's just not ready to be at synagogue, or to be only at synagogue for short amount of time, think about what else you could do to have that feeling of the holiday. Maybe an apple picking trip becomes part of your family ritual or your school ritual or your community ritual for kids who love being out in nature. Honey tasting is a really fun sensory experience. Going to Tashleek, meeting your community, finding when the community is going to, again, be out in nature, doing it together as a family. If it's not the holiday, you can also take photos. You may be comfortable taking photos on the holiday. No, not everyone is. But if you do that apple picking, make a scrapbook of it, you know, and so that each year then you can build on those memories and build on the rituals that your family's creating together. The synagogue is certainly an important part of the high holiday experience. But when we think of the food and nature and all the different components, there might be something that's actually better. David shared with the group that, oh yes, Godcast is now Bim Bam. Exactly. Thanks, David. So check for Bim Bam. And again, just really cool resources. If you're someone who has a child who needs other supports, they're available. For people who might need a Machzor in Braille, the Jewish Braille Institute is an amazing resource. The website is right there. The Jewish Deaf Resource Center is also excellent for families raising kids who are deaf or hard of hearing. Total Caption is just another example of an organization that does captioning. Joe and I can both put you in touch with folks who can do captioning if you need it. I want to, before I open up for Q&A and feedback, I want to also just mention that as we think about holiday time in our communities and our families, that we recognize that exclusion and isolation can be part of the experience of people with disabilities and families raising kids with disabilities. And those of you who are community leaders here, I encourage you to think about these questions. Number one, do people with disabilities need transportation in order to join the holidays? If you have children who are at a residential school, for example, and the families aren't able to get them there. If you have adults who are living in a group home, transportation can be a barrier to being with the community for the holidays. Would a phone call be welcome for people who aren't able to actually attend, or, you know, just a check-in, just what a simple thing to do. And finally, thinking about if you're someone who hosts holiday meals, are there people in your community or families who you think would really appreciate an invitation, and how meaningful that would be? Sarah just shared another great resource. Chabad.org/inclusion is a growing site that has lots of great resources as well. Yes, Sarah, I'm really excited. I've been following your work in Chabad around inclusion, and thank you for sharing that. I have to update with your website as well. I want to go back. I'm sorry, I want to go back to that slide. We'll just scroll through. I know some of you came in late, and this is going to be available as a recording, so you'll have all the resources at your hand. But this is my phone number and my email address, as well as Joe's contact information. And I know that both of us are here to help you think about the high holidays and to help you in general think about accessibility and inclusion in your community. So I'm going to invite you now. It probably would be easiest if you have a question or a comment that you haven't shared yet, to go ahead and type it in the chat box. I think it'll be better than having background noise with the muting. So go ahead if you have any questions or comments. And I'm just going to go back one more time and share, this is the website for Joe's organization, the Union for Reform Judaism, Ruderman Family Foundation, Disabilities Inclusion Learning Center, which has amazing resources for your community. And you can check out whole community inclusion on the Jewish Learning Venture website. And as I said, I'm happy to bring a training, a workshop, or a consultation to your community. Joe, is there anything you'd like to share in closing?
I think that was great. Thank you, Gabby, for the resources and the overview. These are all resources that we will be sharing, and we actively give information from Gabby and whole community inclusion over to our congregations, and also from Sarah's work with Chabad. But in terms of JLV, it was an honor to co-sponsor this webinar with you, Gabby, and we hope that all of you will share the recording when it's ready and pass this great information along, so we can ensure that the high holidays are as inclusive as possible for all of us in each of our respective communities.
Joe, thank you so much. And I really want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. And I'm wishing you Shana Tova, very sweet new year.